Welcome. And the question today from Dunder Mifflin Ho is: who are some women that often get overlooked in history but had major contributions to society? Hi, this is Derek. I just put the Drama Llama, Fred, back in his llama pen, so that I can do this quick video for you with some of the stuff that Fred found on Reddit earlier today. Oh boy, let's get ready for some drama. Scott's Tots 8543 answered with: Sandra Ford, the drug technician who first brought attention to what would become the AIDS epidemic. She knew something was up when she began receiving unusually high numbers of requests for pentamidine, an antibiotic reserved for treating pneumocystis pneumonia in seriously ill, immunocompromised patients. The patients it was being requested for were gay men who had been otherwise healthy. Anthropology Nerd answered with: in 1952, Dr. Virginia Opgar developed a quick, easy 5-point test that summarizes health of newborns and determined those needing emergency assistance. The Opgar score is now given to practically every newborn and helps save countless young lives and reduce infant mortality. Yes, this was such an incredible advancement. I worked in a pediatrician's office, which led to me reading a little more about her. Amazing how little she's mentioned, but most of us are literally here because of her. Phantom Kitten 73 answered with: Marie Tharp. She created the first map of the ocean floor, which led to the discovery of tectonic plates and the theory of continental drift. That doesn't seem like a lot on the surface, but that really had major impacts on our society. Occam Zel2 Azor answered with: Inga Lehmann was a Danish seismologist. She discovered P-waves, waves that reflect off of the inner core, confirming that the Earth has a solid inner core and a liquid outer core. Yes, was just about to comment her as well. It's shocking she's not more well known. The Sorge answered with: the Allied codebreakers at places like Bletchley Park during World War II. They worked incredibly long, tedious, and stressful hours and were a major contributor to the war effort and military intelligence. But their work didn't even receive official recognition from the British government until 2009, 64 years after the war ended. That Green Gentleman 92 answered with: Daphne Oram, first ever composer to produce electronic sound. She pioneered electronic music and laid the path for music today. She even wrote a piece called Still Point that she was never able to perform live because of sexism by her peers, and she never heard it live before she died. But it was performed for the first time in 2018, using a replica of a machine Daphne had created to electronically manipulate a live orchestra. Dashel04 answered with: Bessie Coleman. She was a black woman who wanted to learn to fly. No one would teach her. She learned that the French would, however. So she moved to France, learned French and how to fly. Then she came back to the States and taught whoever wanted to learn. She was alive same time as Amelia Earhart and got no recognition at the time. I was going to put her, I'm glad someone did. She was a huge part of African Americans getting into flight. She played not only a role for females but for African Americans during the early days of aviation, to be able to fly and get into the aviation field. Ewan of York answered with: Mary Anderson invented the windshield wiper in 1903. As soon as the patent expired, it became standard in all cars. She attempted to sell it while she had the rights to it, but most manufacturers refused to believe it was a feature of value. And it is likely her being female colored their lack of enthusiasm. Rex Sparse answered with: Henrietta Leavitt. She was an astronomer at Harvard and discovered a type of star called a Cepheid. Cepheid stars all pulse at the same rate. That lets us know how far away they are. Because of her, we were able to determine how big the universe is, along with many more things concerning its properties. Daily Mash answered with: Eleanor Marx, may be overlooked because of her dad. She played an important role in British trade unions, which forced the move from a 12-hour working day, 6 days a week, to an 8-hour per day, 5 days a weekend. Those extra hours to go on a walk, play Xbox, learn something new, or just chill is a pretty big contribution. Dovakin419 answered with: Cheng Isao or Cheng Shi was the single most successful pirate in all of history. She led an armada of tens of thousands of sailors and 17 separate fleets of ships and held the most important tributary in China under raiding for weeks on end, before managing to give the slip to a combined force of Portuguese, Chinese, and English warships, after being cornered in an inlet with 2 wounded ships and no way out but through. After this venture, she recognized that her power was beginning to wane. So she decided it was better to cash out while she had the leverage. One of her fleets had turned on her during the period, among other things. She managed to negotiate for literally all of her men to be given amnesty, be allowed to join the Chinese Navy, to keep the stuff they had stolen, and for her to be able to keep several ships to be able to have a business in the salt trade. She then ran a gambling house and died peacefully in her sleep. Besides a effing kickbutt story, she has also had some lasting consequences. Her absolute domination over the Chinese Navy showed just how much the Empire had neglected that wing of the military, and the British picked up on this. It was a big part of why they were so willing to fight a naval war across the entire planet, at a time when even messages would take a year and change just to make it back. The Opium Wars were fought because of this. And the treaties that resulted are called by the current Chinese government as the start of the Century of Shame, and are a major touchstone in the government's image of itself. They are invoked today when negotiations with the West break down, as a reason that China ought not bow to outside pressure. For any Canadians, of which I am, it's on the level of Vimy Ridge in our national conception. One of the things I love about her story is that she would simply execute or punish the men in her crew if they were to rape or wed a female captive without their permission. I think it came from her past of being a sex worker that led to her having that rule. Mucha Machacha 42 answered with, Virginia Hall has a building named after her at the CIA. She was an American woman from Baltimore who went to Europe in the 1930s. Lost her leg in a shooting accident. Then proceeded to become a leader in the French resistance and master of disguise. All with a wooden leg. The book, A Woman of No Importance, is about her and came out last year. I was going to add her. The most remarkable spy you never knew existed. She features prominently in a recent Netflix film. I'm spacing out on the title, possibly has Churchill's name in it. She really deserves her own film or films. What a life. Redneck Crazy 01 answered with, Elsie McGill aka Queen of the Hurricanes. She was the world's first female to earn aeronautical engineering degree. The 2 major things she did was, she designed the Maple Leaf Trainer LL and she was to look over manufacturing operations at a Canadian factories that built the Hawker Hurricane. Drainage Spaniel answered with, Cicely Saunders deserves the reputation Mother Teresa has. She basically invented hospice care. Before her, doctors used to just abandon incurables to die with no palliative care. Cicely Saunders arguably eliminated more useless suffering than anyone ever. Nocturnally answered with, Camille Claudel was a sculptor and artist who worked with Rodin. He claimed a lot of her work. Artemisia Gentileschi was a woman painter in the Renaissance with style akin to Caravaggio. She is nowhere near as well known as he, and she also painted a Judith slaying Holofernes painting. These are very brief overviews of what I remember from art school. Lots of talented women tucked away beneath the male gaze of art and history. Also, her Judith slaying Holofernes is apparently based on the likeness of her rapist. It is also the only version where Judith looks like she's committed to the project. That dragon guy answered with, the lady that painted the lanes on the roads for the first time. She did it because she was almost in an accident one night, and didn't want it to happen to anyone else. June McCarroll literally painted the line herself. Now for the sexist BS. 2 men in Michigan had painted lines in the middle of the street before, and saw an improvement in safety. June took this to the Department of Transportation and they scoffed at the idea. Edit to clarify, the California Department of Transportation didn't listen, likely due to the fact that June was a woman. Splotty Pants answered with, Michelle Mouton. It's just auto racing, not super important in the grand scheme of things, but holy poop. She was probably the best rally driver and hill climber of her era and one of the best ever. She She was also very involved in innovating all-wheel drive racing and safety standards. And she raced in the Group B class, which takes a level of skills, guts, and complete disregard for safety that has never been, and never will be matched. Horses and homos answered with every woman who wasn't a monarch, to be honest. How many suffragettes can you name? And compared to that, how many do you think it took? Just in the UK? When we look back at history, it's easy to think, oh, it would have happened sooner or later anyway. Because from where we stand, it looks like that. But no, it didn't happen by some organic wave of history. It was made by real people. Those real people are the ones overlooked in the history books. History is not the rocks visible in the stream, it is the stream. Same thing goes for men, and the civil rights movement too. Crosbubble answered with Dolores Huerta, co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union with Cesar Chavez in the 1960s. She was a civil rights activist and advocated for immigrant worker rights by boycotting white grape owners. Farm workers were exposed to insidious pesticides, poor working conditions, and awful pay. Her determination has changed the landscape of working rights and influenced many to stand up against unfair treatment and discrimination. She has historically lived in the shadow of Chavez, but now can have some recognition because of her involvement in countless social justice movements. She is a civil rights icon and should get the credit she deserves. Blowy Bowie answered with Temple Grandin, a woman who, despite being diagnosed with autism at the age of 4 in 1954, when autism was a sentence to a mental institution, ended up doing wonders for the livestock industry, and is still around today to tell the tale. Yes 4 Cake answered with Rosalind Franklin. Watson and Crick basically stole her research and used it to discover the shape of DNA. They were awarded the Nobel Prize for their discovery. Once the theft was discovered, and she was given proper credit, she had already died from cancer. Her work specialized in X-rays, and she had been exposed to too much radiation. The Nobel Committee has acknowledged her contribution to science, but they can't give her an award because they do not give out awards posthumously. They could make an exception. Pretty sure learning about DNA, the base genetic code for all life, is extremely important. All medical and biological research going on today. Hello Mary answered with Jane Addams. She was a major reformer in the early 1900s and is the founder of social work. She established settlement houses, most famously Hull House in Chicago. Instrumental to women's rights and the roles they play that helped lead to women's right to vote. She really focused on ways that women could be central to community building. And many of her ideas have been influential even today. And finally, Crowfather answered with that woman who gave me a free mini popcorn chicken at KFC when I was like 9. I saved my $10 and rode my bicycle halfway across the town for that kid's meal. I still remember you and treasure that kindness till this day. That was like 14 years ago. Contributed to me showing kindness to others. Acts of kindness are often overlooked nowadays. She is a contribution. I hope she's well and happy. Well, there you have it. A perfectly great question answered by a bunch of fine and honorable citizens. Help support this channel by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. And hit that silly little bell as well to ensure you get the latest videos as they come out. Fred is always finding stuff for me to post regularly. So this is Derek signing off. Thanks for watching. Good grief, it sounds like Fred is out of his pen again. I think he found more drama for me to share with you. See you soon.